Once upon a time, in a humble little village, there lived a poor couple who had long wished for a child. At last, their wish was granted, and they welcomed a baby boy into their world. As the child entered this life, a strange and fateful prophecy echoed across the land. "This child will marry the king's daughter." The words spread, soon reaching the ears of the king himself. Upon hearing this prophecy, the king was filled with fear and outrage. How could a poor boy, born in a lowly cottage, ever be worthy of marrying his royal daughter? Masking his true intentions with kindness, the king journeyed to the couple's home. He told the new parents how much he wished to help them, offering to raise their precious child within the richness and safety of his palace. Blinded by the seeming generosity of their sovereign, the grateful couple agreed. The king, however, had no plans of raising the boy. On his way back to the castle, he paused at a rushing river. He placed the sleeping baby gently inside a sturdy box, murmured a few words, and quietly set it into the water. Watching as the river swept the box away, he believed the prophecy, and the poor child's fate had been drowned forever. But fate has its own plans. The river, wild as it might be, carried the box safely downstream until it was caught in the mill pond by an old mill. A good-hearted miller, hearing curious cries, found the box, and inside, still safely nestled, was the baby boy. He and his wife, themselves childless, took the infant in without hesitation, raising him with all the love they had to give. They named the boy Hans. Under their care, Hans grew up strong and nimble, bright-eyed and quick of wit. He ran through the fields, learned the trade of the mill, and became beloved by all the villagers for his kindness and charm. Years passed, and one day the king himself happened to visit the mill as he travelled through his kingdom. There, to his shock, he saw Hans, now a handsome young man, radiating with all the promise that had once been foretold. The king recognized immediately. This was the same boy he had tried to cast away all those years ago. Panic gripped him, for the prophecy seemed closer than ever to coming true. Cunning as ever, the king devised another plan. Concealing his fear and anger, he handed Hans a sealed letter, instructing him to deliver it, with utmost urgency, straight to the queen. But inside the letter, the message was grim. The bearer of this letter must be killed at once. Unsuspecting and trusting, Hans set out on his journey to the palace. Along the way, his path crossed with a band of robbers who, curious, opened the letter. Reading the king's wicked words, they saw Hans was innocent. Moved by their sense of justice, the robbers secretly exchanged the message for another. Have the bearer of this letter marry the princess. Hans, completely unaware his destiny had shifted, arrived at the palace and delivered the altered letter to the queen. Reading what she believed was her husband's command, she prepared joyfully for her daughter's wedding. When the king returned, he was dismayed and furious to learn Hans had now become his son-in-law. Still, his pride would not allow him to endanger the princess's happiness openly. So he cooked up yet another scheme. Feigning acceptance, the king told Hans, "If you truly wish to be my son-in-law, you must first bring me 3 golden hairs from the devil's head." The king believed the task would surely destroy Hans, for who could face and outwit the devil himself? Undeterred, Hans took up the challenge. His heart was pure and fearless, and he set off on his daunting journey. Along the way, Hans passed through a desolate town. There the people gathered around a barren old tree. Long ago, this tree bore golden apples, but now it is lifeless. Can you find out why? They begged. I will try, promised Hans, when I meet the devil. Further along, Hans came to a village that had once rejoiced in a magical well. This well had flowed with sweet wine, but now it was dry as a bone. The villagers implored Hans to discover why their blessing had left them. I will find out for you, Hans reassured them. Finally, at a wide, rushing river, Hans met a ferryman who looked as old as time itself. The man, sweat on his brow and oars in hand, asked Hans in a desperate voice, "Can you ask the devil how I might be freed from this endless work?" Once again Hans nodded, vowing to return with an answer. With his mind set, Hans pressed on until he reached the cliffs that marked the border of hell itself. There he was met by the devil's wife. She saw in Hans a kindness seldom found, and felt pity for him. Wishing to help, she led Hans inside and hid him where the devil could not find him. Soon after, the devil returned, heavy-footed and tired from his travels. As he fell into a deep slumber, his wife crept near, plucking one by one 3 shining golden hairs from his head. Each time she pulled a hair, the devil mumbled in his sleep, answering Hans's 3 questions. On the barren apple tree, because a mouse is gnawing at its roots, kill the mouse and the tree will flourish once more. On the dried-up wine well, a great stone is wedged in the spring below. Remove the stone and the wine will flow again. On the ferryman's curse, whoever takes the oar from the ferryman next will take his place. With the 3 golden hairs in hand, along with the devil's answers, Hans slipped away, guided by the devil's wife. Retracing his steps, Hans visited each place in turn. He told the townsfolk to find and kill the mouse at the apple tree. Instantly, the golden apples blossomed once again. In the next town he revealed the buried stone, and as it was removed, the wine gushed forth. And finally, to the weary ferryman, Hans delivered the answer. The very next traveller to cross the river was tricked into taking the oar, setting the old man free after all those endless years. Each town, grateful for Hans's help, rewarded him richly, showering him with gifts and treasures. Hans returned to the palace, the 3 golden hairs in hand, and gifts from the people he had aided. The king had no choice but to accept Hans as his son-in-law, for the prophecy had now come true. But the king's curiosity remained. He secretly sought out the ferryman to ask more about his mysterious fate. The ferryman, clever and desperate for escape, handed the oar to the king, and in that moment, the king became bound to ferry travellers across the river forever. From that time on, Hans and the princess ruled the kingdom with wisdom and kindness, their days filled with joy. So it was that the child of destiny, through courage and compassion, fulfilled the prophecy and lived happily ever after.